term that concerns my project is glossophobia, and it is the fear of public speaking, the most prevalent fear in the world. And what I'm going to be talking about with you guys today are some of my findings that I've gathered over the past semester. And this includes some fascinating statistical data, interviews, some information from my interviews, and let's get started. So let me start off by giving some background on my life as a speaker. From the time I was in elementary school, I've been talkative around my close friends and family, and talking in front of people came naturally to me, and I enjoyed doing it. At Great Seneca Creek Elementary, I was an ambassador, and it was my job to showcase the environmentally safe aspects of my school to education officials like the superintendent, and I would give them tours and things like that. I would talk to them about the school and get them acquainted with everything. And I talked a lot and in front of very large groups. I even spoke in front of Congress about my green school without any hesitation or fear. And there is a little picture of my fetus self from my 5th grade. In middle school, represented by the other fetus picture right there, talking in front of people wasn't as prevalent as it is now in high school, and my exposure to speaking in front of people decreased a lot. So coming into high school, I was a nervous wreck. As you can see, I hit puberty and matured a little bit. And I was unsure of whether I would fit in or make good first impressions, and it is because of that initial anxiety that I developed an awful phobia of speaking in front of others. I became scared of peer judgment and the vulnerability that came along with speaking to my class members. I'm still fine in front of my friends and family, but when my name gets called up to come to the front of the class, my heart always drops and my throat always closes, just like it did about 2 minutes ago. It's definitely gotten better, especially after doing this project, but it still sucks and I'm not a fan, so don't judge me if I'm a little bit shaky. I'm a little bit shaky. So since I suffer from glossophobia, the fear of public speaking, I'm interested in how one might conquer their stage fright, considering it has implications in the professional world. And for the sake of my fellow students, and for everyone else suffering from the fear, myself included, I wanted to inform you guys on the true prevalence of glossophobia and give some effective methods on how to help fix this widespread gut-wrenching fear. I also thought it would be cool to do a presentation on the fear of giving presentations. So, when beginning this project, I was curious to find what proportion of students have anxiety and what kind of feelings they experience before, during, and after giving a presentation, and I found this statistic online. So according to the National Institute of Mental Health, 74% of people have some kind of anxiety about public speaking. That's a greater proportion than people who are afraid of death. So I guess Jerry Seinfeld is right when he says that at a funeral, the average person would rather be in the casket than giving the eulogy. So 74%, I found this stat shocking. I thought for sure the number had to be higher, at least for high school students, so I conducted this survey. Now you probably can't read the really small font, but what I asked students was how often they experience speech anxiety, either always, often, sometimes, or never, their level of anxiety on a 1 to 10 scale. Then I had them list any physical or emotional responses they experience before, during, and after giving a presentation to their English class. I sent this survey out to 8 different Northwest classes, 2 from each grade level, and that was on-level, honors, and AP classes. 84%. This is the proportion of students who reported experiencing anxiety when speaking in front of others. Only 29 confident souls out of the 185 said that they never experienced any anxiety, and I think they're just lying. So, here's a little graphic representation of the previous stat to give you guys a little visual perspective. So the orange represents the small number of kids, the liars, who said that they never experienced any speech anxiety, and the blue represents the students that admitted experiencing anxiety at least sometimes. However, there is some bias, since I didn't interview or survey any adults, and high school students, as we know, are stress-filled balls of hormones, so that definitely adds on to the anxiety factor. Regardless, this data is pretty cool, and it helps me support my claim. So to see if this 84% was of any significance, I decided to employ some of the knowledge that I learned in Ms. Johnson's AP Statistics class and conduct my very own hypothesis test. If you guys take stat next year, you will learn about it. And this test lets me challenge the hypothesis or the original claim that only 74% of people have speech anxiety. I think it's more than 74%. So since I don't think any of you take statistics, I had actually presented this to my AP Euro class, and I think the majority, or if not all of the students, took AP Stat. But this is the equation that I used. Probably don't understand it, but it helped me get to this value, 0.7%. This number represents the probability of getting an 84% glossophobia rate in my surveys. That's a pretty small chance. This small chance. And it's such a small chance that I'm free to reject the 74% claim and tell you guys that I'm literally 99.93% sure that more than 74% of people have glossophobia, or at least more than 74% of high school students. But like I said earlier, there is some bias since I didn't ask any adults. So if any of you guys get butterflies or sweaty palms during your presentation, don't feel like an outcast, because in a class of 30, there are probably 25 other students who feel the exact same way. That brings me to the second part of my survey, where I ask students to list how they feel and what they experience before, during, and after presenting. Here I made a little word splash of some of the terms that students kept answering in their responses. Many answers overlapped, but by the end of my data analysis, there was a good list of outstanding characteristics for each. So for the before giving a presentation section, I received a great amount of responses that said fast heartbeat. I know that especially before I present, and even when I present, my heart feels like it's about to pop out of my chest. It's like I just ran 8 miles. Now, you might be wondering why I have a picture of Eminem, but before you lose yourself with curiosity, let me tell you an interesting response that I received. So one kid said that before I present, my palms are sweaty, my knees are weak, and my arms are heavy. Which was especially interesting since that is awfully close to an Eminem lyric. Butterflies, a feeling of vulnerability, and shaking were also popular answers, but flat-out nervousness was the most popular. So even if you're not presenting at all, like none of you guys are, just watching someone present can make high anxiety people extremely nervous. This is the most dreaded stage of glossophobia, the actual presentation where your nerves are put to the test in front of all of your peers or superiors. And this is what all that studying, research, and anxiety have prepared you for. Weeks of anticipation for something that will be completed within minutes. And that's a lot to take in. So when the teacher says, "Ready when you are," students reported getting choked up, which is that lump in your throat sensation. Fast heart rate, represented by the cat-dog animation, is still prevalent during this stage, considering there is so much adrenaline being excreted during this high-stress period. Some sway, shake, or say instead of taking appropriate pauses. Nerves cause some students to forget what they have to say or to lose their place in their notes. And dry mouth was also a common response that people experience during a presentation, which I'm actually experiencing right now. I would say about 3/4 of the students wrote the word relief in the after giving a presentation section. And the rest wrote words like calmed, accomplished, happy, thankful, things like that. So finally being able to relax is definitely a rewarding feeling after showcasing your information and your nerves to your peers, and most often you get a nice little applause for your efforts. So with all of that stress that students face leading up and actually talking to their class, and with all the anxiety that they get, just all the anxiety, it raises the question, how can I overcome my glossophobia? So, to help me find a nice answer to that big question, I interviewed Mr. Mike Ginsberg, president and CEO of his company, Culkin Ginsberg. Holding an important position like CEO, Mr. Ginsberg talks in front of people all the time, and his crowds vary anywhere from 20 to 2,500. He's a close family friend, and he's told me stories before about how he's gotten over his awful glossophobia, so I decided to interview him and try and get some more details so that I can share with you guys. I asked him a series of questions, and we spoke for about half an hour, and during that time he told me about the first time that he public spoke and what he does now to rock every presentation. So the first thing that I asked Mike was about the first time he made a fool of himself in front of an audience. And he recited a pretty interesting story. So as a young entrepreneur with aspirations for success, Mike was asked to speak at a conference in Arizona in front of a mere 50 people. And he had 6 months to prepare. He told me in our interview that 5 months out from actually giving the presentation, he would encounter sleepless nights, and about 4 months out, when he practiced in front of his wife, she basically told him it was god-awful and that he should find something else to do. And his business partner said the same exact thing when he practiced in front of him. He said it was terrible. But there was no turning back for this distraught young man, and on the day of his presentation, he rocked it. Like he literally rocked the podium because he was shaking so much. He said he was sweating through his clothes and that literally every possible thing that could go wrong did go wrong. He said the wrong things. He did everything awful. So he told me that to this day, after having 2 kids, starting and selling 3 businesses, and getting married, it is still the scariest experience of his life. But that didn't stop him, and he forced himself to continue until he finally became the successful businessman he is today. Now, as a seasoned speaker, Mr. Ginsberg has found ways to cope with his anxieties and give effective professional presentations. And he was nice enough to let me know how he deals with his anxiety so that I could help deal with mine. First off, Mr. Ginsberg stresses the importance of dressing one level above your audience, unless, of course, it's commitment day and you have to rep your college. So that's why I'm not dressed up. Looking good is feeling good, so dressing up can be a giant confidence boost. If your audience is dressed casual, dress business casual, or you can have your dad's phone go on. If your audience is dressed semi-formal, then wear a tux or a gown. In order to dress above your audience, you need to know your audience. It's very important to know who you're going to be speaking to so you can organize your presentation accordingly. Controlling the environment was another big tip that Mr. Ginsberg offered me. He says that he always has the temperature to his liking, the seat set up to his liking, the lighting to his liking, so that he has the optimum level of comfort. Also, be prepared and confident. If you think you're going to do poorly, you will do poorly. So know your stuff and have some faith in your ability. Mike also made it clear to me to never turn down an opportunity to present. Even if you're terrified, doing presentations is the only way to get over your fear. You have to face it if you want to beat glossophobia, so don't ever just whip out. It's a process that can be conquered one brick at a time, and it's the same way that Mr. Mike Ginsberg achieved his success in the realm of public speaking. If you can be funny, be funny. It lightens the mood a little bit. Also, talk about yourself and engage the audience. Despite however boring you think you are, audiences like to hear personal stories so that they can relate to you. He also told me never memorize anything or go off of a script, but that's really up to preference. A script really helps me, at least. It gives me guidance, so I prefer it. I'm literally reading this right off of my paper right now. Because it's impossible for me to go off the top of my head, especially when I'm nervous. I just can't think or function. But that's just me. So to conclude my presentation, I'll recap some of my findings. First off, if you ever feel any speech anxiety, you're not alone, since most people are scared to get up in front of their peers and speak. And if speaking makes you nervous, there are so many great techniques to combat the phobia. One of the scholarly journals I read, this is going to be tough, the International Journal of Pharmaceutical Science and Healthcare, said that levels of physical activity are directly related with glossophobia. So the more active you are, the less nervous and stressed you will be, and your gastrointestinal activity will decrease. Or in other words, no more butterflies. I'm sure self-confidence plays a major role in that correlation. Personally, I recommend practice. I literally presented this in front of 15 different people before today to get me comfortable with the information. I presented to my mom whenever I could. I presented to my friend who I presented with when I presented the first time, presented to my teachers, my counselor, and more. When I presented to my mom, she was very harsh on me, and she gave me some pointers on some areas so I can improve upon when presenting without any regard for my feelings. But I think it worked, so I'm happy. Mirror practice is a great technique that helps you get rid of any feeling of unpreparedness, and it helps you become acquainted with any noticeable flaw that you might have when giving a presentation, so like swaying or bad eye contact or things like that. The more you practice presenting, the more comfortable you will be in front of an audience. And also, even though you may be reluctant to volunteer to go first, it's a great idea because if you wait longer, it just prolongs the nervousness. Of course, in order to actually go first, or go at all, you need to know your stuff, so prepare. And even if you are unprepared and mess up, no one really cares. Frankly, no one really is paying attention to what you have to say anyway. And you're the only one who knows your information, so nobody really knows if you messed up or not. And don't ever picture your audience in their underwear. That's just weird, and it'll probably make you more uncomfortable when you have to get up to the podium. So if you guys, I'm sure I should saw a lot of you guys at the Ulysses Fair. I had a little handout, which I think a lot of you picked up. So I hope that that helped. Hopefully I presented well today. I don't think I did that bad. Here are my selected references.